Recording has begun.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. If you're still getting food, don't worry about that. And has everyone gotten a chance to scan the check-in QR code? All right. We'll be... Yeah, sure. We started a little late. Okay. We'll start in about 5. I heard it like, I think it's, yeah.
The recording of
Okay, so they're different.
This is specifically for EC department. Every other department has been on seminars.
Yeah.
But we have it. Good question. They're required to do every week. They're allowed to miss 3. Take 3 via Zoom. And we also give them the option of choosing 3 different department seminars. So,
There's a little wiggle room.
yeah.
It's nice to give that flexibility.
Yeah. Shoes. I have to remember to bring some shoes from my apartment at my desk because this is the second time where
I was going to say, that's a great thing to stand for an hour.
they are, but I have other ones that are still comfortable, but also and have like padding and stuff because that is important for me. My joints are they're 60 years old at this point.
LA took a toll.
So yeah, I definitely need like good support and everything, but I have found like good shoes that do that. That still look. This isn't bad as a blazer, but like I like to feel. Well, we do this so rarely. I think. Like I don't worry as much. Sometimes with grad students and stuff, I'll dress up a little bit more, but I just only do it on the days when I feel like it, you know. So
On this one?
It
It already
definitely-
started recording.
Yeah, started
Okay,
something.
okay. It's already started? Yeah. I'm just concerned about the Zoom recording.
Yeah, I have the copy. I have the link.
Okay.
It's only 10 o'clock, so I can, if you want to, I can copy it to you.
Oh, that's all right. If you can record this session, that's fine. Sure. Then you can record it.
Once you guys want to start, you can
Make it
remember
full
use the
screen.
Zoom.
Yeah,
the
okay.
Zoom start webinar. That's what it is.
Yep.
do I have cat hair? I have a dog.
You might.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Picked up the fence.
Yeah, my dog. He's
Better.
I like literally, I swear, I pull laundry out of the dryer and it still has dog on it. It's like clean laundry. Sorry, come back.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the EC seminar. Today, you know the drill, but today we have 2 speakers differently, and we have Miss Jenny Coffman and Miss Silvia Sheffield. Miss Jenny is a research librarian, and she's been with NC State since October 2023. Right? She, along with her colleagues, gives her insights and advices on data management, citation management, and critical evaluation of staff. So her insights today will be really valuable. And Miss Silvia is a collections and research librarian. She's been with NC State for quite long now, since 2015, right? I'm sure every one of us at some point have used engineering textbooks, journals, and conference proceedings from NC State libraries. In that case, you must know that she's the person who manages all of that, right? So today, both of them are here with us to give us their insights about what certain things that to look out for while publishing, which most of us will be doing very frequently since you are all PhD students. So without wasting more time, you can start anywhere else. Thank you.
I guess, is this already recording? Is the Zoom already recording? I think it started. Okay, let me know if it's not. Okay, it sounds like everyone's gotten a chance to sign in, so we'll go ahead and start with the slides. Well, welcome and thank you for coming out this morning to what you need to know about Deceptive publishers. As we were kindly introduced, my name is Silvia Sheffield, and I'm the collections and research librarian for engineering. So I'm one of the people that makes sure you have those research materials. Yeah, go for it. That you need for your research and your learning. And I liaise with a number of departments in engineering, including ECE. And I'll hand it over to Jenny.
And I'm Jenny Coffman. I am also a research librarian for engineering. I'm the instructional liaison, so most of my work revolves around helping researchers and students understand the information landscape of engineering, and that includes teaching classes in both the undergraduate level and graduate level, and providing research consultations at the group level and at the individual level.
All right, so the agenda for today is to cover what a deceptive publisher is, talk about some other forms of deceptive scholarship, and of course, how to identify and avoid them. So you may have heard the term deceptive publishing. It's also referred to as predatory publishing, if that's a familiar term. And so it's the exploitative practice of publishing research articles without checking for quality. And this is typically while also charging you a lot of money. And so, yeah, so that's how these companies are operating. So they're operating to make a profit rather than to further the scientific community. So they don't have rigorous practices of peer review and editorial oversight. And I will say, well, there's certainly some bad actors who intentionally submit to these pay-to-publish journals. For the most part, it's just people who aren't aware, who think it's a reputable journal and get and don't realize that their work is not going through a rigorous process. So before we go too much further, I wanted to also bring up open access publishing as a broader concept. So I imagine many of you are familiar, but open access publishing means providing free access to articles to everybody without having to pay subscription fees. And so this is done by generating revenue from other sources. Sometimes, professional bodies pay for it. Sometimes they charge authors an article processing fee to support the publication. And while most deceptive publishers do follow the OA model in order to charge authors money, most OA publishers are not deceptive or predatory. Sometimes there's like an unfair connection made between the two. So that's why we made this big old graphic to show that most of OA publishing is fully on the up and up and reputable. And there are resources like there's a directory of open access journals and some other things that can help you verify if an OA journal is reputable. I also wanted to give a quick shout out for some of the things the libraries does to support open access publishing. So we do have some negotiated deals with certain publishers to cover the costs of OA publishing for NC State authors. So it's not, I don't want to get your hopes up too much, so it's not most publishers, and we can't pay individual APCs outside of these deals. But if you're interested in learning more, we have a page on our website that lists the details in each of the publishers. So just wanted to take like a quick raise of hands poll of the room. How many of you have gotten an email from a Deceptive publisher or conference, or think you might have? Okay, seeing a decent amount of hands go up, I'd say. I too have received those emails. Jenny, imagine you have received them as well. So you probably already have an awareness of maybe some of the red flags to look for, but we'll go through them so that you can be aware. So one of them is a too good to be true, small amount of time between submission and publication. So this is an example from a Deceptive journal where about a month passed between them first receiving the manuscript and then publishing it. So in this case, it's likely they skipped peer review entirely. Another thing to look out for is journal titles or publisher names that sound like suspiciously close to a reputable organization or publisher. Sometimes they also, throw in kind of vague but impressive sounding terms like advanced or global or international. So these screenshots are an example. The top one is a predatory publisher, and the bottom one, Nexus Uni, that's a really commonly used article database that a lot of libraries subscribe to. Another red flag is the website itself of the publisher or journal, if it's kind of low quality overall, so things to look out for. Broken links, contradictory information, if it's missing contact information, a lot of pages are like still under construction. So, none of these things are a disqualifier, but it's just together building a picture for you of the quality of the journal. Next red flag is flattering emails that seem like they're, maybe a form email, have some errors in them. And so this could be inviting you to submit a paper to, for example, often to like a special issue, or this one I have up on the screen is inviting you to join the editorial board for this journal. You can see like the bolded phrase, like proficiency and expertise in various fields, honorable editor. They're not really saying anything specific about you. They're just trying to flatter you. So, keep an eye out for that sort of thing. And, speaking of editorial boards, when that's something you can also look for on a journal's website to see who's on the editorial board. But something to be aware of with predatory journals is sometimes they list, really well-regarded scholars without their knowledge. Or sometimes they even know and, they've asked the journal, hey, I didn't agree to this, take my name down, but they haven't. So, if a journal is otherwise looking kind of questionable and you see a name of a prominent scholar, maybe do a little more digging to like double check that they're actually involved. And it's also common for, those predatory journals to not do any vetting on their editorial boards. So the screenshot on this slide is from a journal in Nature where some scientists submitted a fake doctor fraud to, I think, 360 journals, and 48 of them accepted her to their board of editors. So again, I want to emphasize that these symptoms exist on a spectrum. So just because there are a few grammatical errors or broken links on a website, or you received a form letter, these things on their own don't mean that it's a deceptive publisher. Instead, really consider these holistically to give yourself an overall picture of the quality of the publisher. And also consider a journal may be imperfect without rising to the level of predatory. So kind of an example of that, MDPI would be an example of a publisher that exhibits some characteristics that we would normally label as red flags, but overall we don't consider predatory as a publishing organization. So you can see in this screenshot from one of their journals, they do have a really rapid publication schedule. But having spoken to some MDPI editors who are professors here, they can say, we vouch for our journal, and they accomplish this by having just really fast deadlines for editors and reviewers, but still going through the peer review process and having high quality feedback. On the other hand, we've also, last time this workshop was given, we had a number of people there who were like, I'm constantly receiving emails from MDPI to review for, journals that are not in my area of expertise. So I think it's fair to say they have a mixed reputation and are a good example of why you can't rely on just one marker to determine if a journal is exploitative or not. So my personal recommendation is for mega publishers like MDPI, or probably also Frontiers. You'll want to take a look at the particular journal you're interested in addition to looking at the publisher as a whole, because it sounds like with publishers that big, there's going to be some variation from journal to journal. So a few tips for researching journals. We'll send these slides out after, and we have a link to this checklist from Think, Check, Submit that just, details some questions that you can ask and look for answers for. I also always recommend, looking up a journal on Google, seeing what, people are saying on, some of those academic discussion sites, or even on sites like Quora or Reddit. It's often illuminating to hear what other people's experiences have been. And you're also always welcome to ask a librarian, and we'll give you our 2 cents. So we're going to take a look at an example article and have you all look at it and see whether you think it's from a predatory journal or not. So if you're able to pull up the article on phone or laptop, the QR code and the link go to the same place. It's a really short review article. So we're going to take about 4 minutes for y'all to take a look, see what you see. You can do this by yourself, or if you want to team up with somebody next to you and talk about it, that's fine too. If you want to get more breakfasty snacks, this is a good time for that as well. And we'll come back as a group in about 4 or 5 minutes and see what we learned. Any questions before we take that little break? Any trouble getting to the article? All right. Go ahead and read. We'll be back in a few. All right. Hopefully you've got to look at a few things there. Not expecting you to have read the article in its entirety, of course. Would anyone like to make a guess on whether this article is predatory or not, and what made you think that? Good. Brave volunteer in the back.
Yeah, so if you find out a lot of negative reviews about the version and minutes and all this stuff.
Yeah, so somebody took a good strategy of doing some research on the publishing group and reading some sinister things. Any other things that y'all noticed about the article?
I saw the paragraph, and then I scrolled around and I saw Darth Vader and Jedi's.
Yeah, so we're, in addition to an article, maybe not looking how we're not used to seeing an article, some questionable Star Wars content coming in there. I think you also had your hand up in the red. Very few citations. Yeah.
Published date or just 3 days apart for the same month?
Yes. So yeah, a month to go through the full publishing cycle. Anyone else want to chime in? So I'm guessing we don't have any big, huge Star Wars buffs in the room. I'm not. I guess we do, yes. So the article title says mitochondria, but the entire article after that is referring to midichlorians, which are not a real thing outside of the Star Wars universe. So if you knew that, you had a leg up on this exercise. And as someone mentioned, if you look at the references, there's a number of articles by Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker and some people who are probably not publishing on this planet. So yes, this is not an example we made up. This was a very real article that did get published. I don't know if it's still up on the journal's website. This is why we saved a PDF so that we could show it as an example. But yes, this was kind of a sting operation that some scientists did to show that this journal was not using good review practices. So before I turn it over to Jenny to talk about conferences and other things, any questions so far about predatory journals?
A blacklist of these journals.
It's a great question. Does the university have a blacklist of journals? We do not. There have been, people out in the world who have made blacklists at one time or another. I think a common one that was big for a while was called Beale's List. It was fairly controversial because it seemed like some of the entries were, I guess, legitimately predatory, but it also kind of tended to be a bit biased about open access publications from developing nations, and so it was like not a great list. So there's not a blacklist, but if there's a journal you're considering or you're thinking of publishing in, you're always welcome to contact us, and we can take a look and give you our perspective on it. Any other questions at this point? ISSN, yes. I don't know what it stands for. International. Yeah, so it's just an identification number for journals and magazines, like just a unique identifier. Yes, I don't think it's not difficult to get one. It's like getting, an ISBN for a book. Like if you're self-publishing a book, you can register and get an ISBN. So it's a great question. Having an ISSN is not in itself a sign of quality or not quality. Other questions? right, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny to talk about other types of deceptive scholarship. Let's see if I can make this work. I guess it has to be on this side. Okay, does that do a good enough job? Can everybody hear me in the back? Okay. So we're going to talk about other types of deceptive scholarship now. So we're talking predatory conferences and hijacked journals. You'll see a lot of similar things to what Silvia just talked about. These are organizations or companies that have a lot of practices that are very alluring or incentivizing to researchers, especially unsuspecting ones. So I love this little image of the researcher getting lured in by the anglerfish. So we're going to talk about predatory conferences first. What are they? They appear legitimate, but they're organized by review-generating companies who exploit presenters and attendees and increase profits through registration fees. They often lack like an adequate number of scholarly presentation sessions, both in, like I said, the number of presentations, but also maybe the topics that you're looking at. If you look at the itinerary of the conference, might be like all over the place or not what you're used to in your field. The language that they use may be more like normal run-of-the-mill instead of like technical that you would expect from your field. And then on the conference day itself, they may have very few attendees, limited number of presentations, and sometimes have multiple conferences happening across different topics, all crammed into a single conference. It's kind of a weird situation, but it gives the illusion that there's more people that are interested because the topics, since they're so varied, can grab in lots of different people, and together it gives the illusion that it's a bigger conference than it is. So, quick rundown on some of the red flags to look out for. If a conference is not in line or organized with other conferences in your field, if it doesn't seem like there's an awareness of like the norms of your field and the way that it's marketed and the timing and things like that, if it claims to be associated with a professional organization, but it can't be found on that organization's website, that's a big red flag. If there's like a suspicious URL for the conference, or it looks like a poorly organized website, if the registration fee is significantly higher than what you'd expect to attend or present, if an invitation has a lot of typos or is overly flattering or too generic or not about your area of expertise, again, a red flag. So one of the things that I want to highlight when we're thinking about red flags, this is a guide from the Himmelfarb Health Sciences Library, and it has information on the whole kind of ecosystem of predatory scholarship, but the conferences one especially is really, really helpful, kind of lays everything out. So this will be linked in our presentation as well. Okay, so we're going to jump right into an example here. Couple of things if you kind of take a perusal here. First of all, it says, I wanted to get in contact with you again. So a lot of times these are very persistent. If I know some of you have encountered these emails already of invitations to predatory conferences, and you often get them over and over and over again, and it's a real pain. And they even admit it in their email, like, we're getting in contact with you again. So if you're getting multiple persistent emails from an organization, that's a red flag. Not just general marketing, like if you happen to get on an email list or something, it's not just advertising, it's actual invitations to you over and over again, that's a red flag. And then if there's an element of urgency, it says here, like, we're looking to fill a few remaining presentation slots. Like,
that type of like, come and get it, we're almost out of slots type of situation is not normal for a conference invitation. And then there's like talking about covering many different fields of medicine. If you're looking at like the agenda here, it's kind of all over the place. And it's, genetics is a very broad field. And unless it's, a really big, highly well-known organization, a lot of the smaller ones tend to be very focused. And so you want to make sure that the agenda is very clear and topic-based and gives you an idea of what you're going to be getting out of the conference. And this is kind of like all over the place. Okay, so now we're going to break down this a little bit further. And as you start to encounter conferences that you might want to go to, invitations that you're receiving via email, we've put together some questions to ask yourself in different areas of, a conference's marketing and presentation online to start to interrogate whether this is an opportunity that you want to pursue and what level of maybe predatory or deceptive you might be looking at. Because again, this tends to be a spectrum. And so it's not always this like right or wrong, yes or no, this is predatory or not. There's kind of levels of quality. And so sometimes it's just about deciding, is this a big enough risk that I want to take? What level of quality is this conference kind of giving off? So one first area is to think about the conference organizers and to look into the conference organizers. So is the conference sponsored by a professional organization? Can you find the conference through that professional organization's website, like we said? Is the conference organized by a for-profit company? This is a big asterisk. Because of industry, there's plenty of conferences, of course, that are legitimate and highly recognized in the field that are for-profit. But using this in conjunction with other things that are happening can be a red flag. Do you know if the people on the advisory boards agreed to serve on the boards? This one can be really hard, but something to ask your mentor, like, okay, this is a conference that I'm looking at. These are the people on the boards. Does this fit with, do you recognize these people? Does this fit with what they tend to do? You can also look them up on LinkedIn or other social media accounts and see if they themselves have identified like themselves as a conference organizer or part of the professional organization that's putting this on or whatever. And then are the names of the organizers even provided? Like that's sometimes a big thing that happens too. The organizers aren't even on the website. And then thinking about the conference scope. Is the scope too broad? Does it lack a focus on a single discipline? Do you see key phrases such as to promote scientific innovation used throughout the site? Like you will see this in lots of normal conferences as well, but there's the buzzwords that are used for marketing, and then there's the detail where they actually go into their mission and outline what they're trying to offer people, have a nice like layout of all the goals and objectives of the conference, the itinerary is detailed, all of that stuff. So there's substance on top of the buzzwords, whereas if it's more deceptive and predatory, you get the buzzwords and fluff and then nothing else often. And then the conference organization. Can you easily identify the venue? Is it in one location or many? Are the materials poorly organized? Are the themes current for your field? Is the website unclear or misleading? Is the URL appropriate? Is the contact information available? And then the peer review process, you want to look into that as well. Is the process for submissions clearly outlined? Does the conference promise a quick turnaround time? Again, a lot of similar themes here to predatory journals. So once you kind of get in the habit of checking up on this stuff and get a feeling for it, it becomes very like habitual and you're used to it. You can apply it to journals, conferences, any aspect really of the scholarly ecosystem. Are the fees similar to other conferences? Are they higher than other conferences? Do presenters pay more to attend? Oftentimes for good conferences, presenters actually pay less because they're helping run, they're contributing to the success of the conference. And so if they're paying more, that's a big red flag. So we're gonna go to this example of a likely deceptive conference called IEEE Forum. So I'm gonna kind of go on their website, walk us through some of the stuff here that's going on. So just looking at this right off the bat, probably a lot of you are used to the branding and kind of the look of IEEE. It's a big organization. It has great branding. And regardless of, it's a big organization. So they do have smaller groups that they don't always have access to like the money or the branding of IEEE as a whole. But I've always seen any organization associated with IEEE always at least has their logo. And so that's kind of key here, is this is not the IEEE logo. If you look, the website design is just not great. If you look at the about, it's a lot of fluff. Like I was saying, there's not a lot of detail. This is capitalized in the middle of a sentence. It's clunky. So that's a big red flag. Going further, looking at the upcoming conferences, again, this design is kind of strange, but sometimes that happens with like a smaller group. But if you click on what's supposed to be, so the idea is that IEEE Forum, from what it looks like, is a conference organizer, and then they're putting on a whole bunch of conferences, which is not unusual. IEEE has thousands of conferences a year. But if you're looking at this is supposed to be like a singular conference in a singular location, we have that thing that I was talking about before where they have a lot of different topics and a lot of different conferences that all coexist in a single location at the same time to try to make it look like they have more going on. But all of these topics are all over the place. If we follow this thread, there's so much going on with this thing. There's a lot of great examples here. But if we look at the recent publications, for example, a few details, this is another spoof. IEEE Explore is their publishing platform. This is another spoof. But they have two people publishing in this issue, which that doesn't happen, especially for something like IEEE. Conference organizers, there's this random email contact information, but if you click on one of these conferences, there's more stuff going on here. There's this key contact, but it's, there's no identifying, there's no photo. It's not very specific, and there's no information about, I've gone through this whole thing. There's no information about the conference organizers. How are we doing on time? We could step through here. The publication process is you can just email them your paper. There is a little submission form, but there's no vetting at all. So needless to say, there's a lot of times where it's very gray and you don't know for sure. This one I feel pretty comfortable saying is clearly predatory. But there's always, you never know for sure. But this one's not looking good. The other thing that I want to highlight is comparing this to IEEE. If this were a more gray situation, one of the things that you can do is go to IEEE. And just quickly look, there's nothing here. You have their conferences page. You can put IEEE forum in there too. It's not there. But the nice thing about these professional organizations is there's a lot of documentation. So when you go and compare, and look at, the branding, look at all this stuff, it's very easy to tell, they have their call for papers, they have the conference application, they have the committees right here linked. It's very transparent. So that's all the stuff that you want to be looking for when you're looking for something that's reputable. Okay, and then one last thing, just to take one more look at like an email example. This is an email from the director of the International Conference of Agricultural Librarians and Documentalists of India. And they're asking her to, present. But one, the turnaround time on this was really quick. The conference was like less than a month away. So that's a big, a big red flag. There's no, like we've said before, there's nothing in here that tells them they know about her work. It comes across as a very form email. And then it also is kind of like overly flattering, talking about it's such an honor in a couple of places to, we deem it an honor to invite you. But again, with no backing it up of showing that they know who she is, this is not a good sign. And then again, it's like they even say it's for librarians serving various universities and colleges across India. So it's not, it's tailored to a very specific audience. It's not an international conference that's like, very global in its audience. And so thinking about, does this, even when things are a little bit more like, even when you're trying to decide on a conference in general, you want to make sure that you're using your time wisely and it's a good fit because it's an area that fits you and your research and has an audience that you're going to be presenting to that makes sense for what you're doing. And so all of these things kind of added up. And she also did a couple other did a little bit of other research. So she did look up the organization, and it did have a website, so it had like a footprint online at least. And it did show up on the university's website that it was affiliated with. So that was like an interesting twist. But looked up the sender, they couldn't find the sender as affiliated with the university at all. And looked up the sender on LinkedIn as well and had no clear affiliation with, an industry or a university. They Googled the conference, and many of the pages had spammy characteristics, and they were unable to find an itinerary or schedule. So at the end of all this, sorry, let me get this back into slideshow mode. At the end of all of this, maybe this is a real conference, but there were too many flags for her, so she decided to pass on this opportunity. So to wrap this all up, this is another great conference evaluation tool from the Himmelfarb Health Sciences Library that, again, just has these questions that you might want to ask yourself in a nice table where you can kind of check things off and see it a little bit easier. Another way that you can kind of help yourself is to check out Think, Check, Attend. It's an international initiative that aims to guide and assist researchers and scholars when choosing trusted conferences to attend and to present their research. Okay. So what is a hijacked journal? We're going to talk about hijacked. We're switching gears, talking about hijacked journals. These mimic legitimate journals by adopting their titles, ISSNs, forget what was under here, and other metadata. They usually mirror legitimate journals without permission from the original journal. And rarely, the publishers will actually buy rights to the legitimate journal, but continue the publication under less rigorous protocols without advertising it or telling people. So this is perhaps one of like the most insidious and like hard to identify aspect of things that we've talked about today. And while it's still kind of, it's not quite as normal as other things, I think with AI and a lot of other technology and habits that are cropping up in the field, in scholarship in general, this is just going to get harder and become a bigger issue. So there's, it can be really hard to identify that this is happening, but let's see it's not, there we go. Retraction Watch comes to the rescue. I think Silvia talked about Retraction Watch earlier, and they have a hijacked journal checker that they keep up to date as best they can. And so this is what it looks like. It just has the journal title, the URL that's been hijacked, the ISSN. So remembering that that's like the unique identifier that anything can, any type of like publication can take advantage of. It's kind of like a driver's license for people, but for publications. And then the original journal title and the URL that's actually the real URL for that real journal. Okay, so now going back over to Silvia here. She's going to talk about how to find legit journals or conferences.
Yeah, so
any questions? Sorry, I should have asked that. Any questions on the conference piece? Yeah. Leave. Just walk out. You have no obligation to stay. You're kind of out. I mean, you could try to demand your money back from them, but there might not even be anybody there to ask. So you're kind of out of luck. But you can, report that online, like in these communities, like even just like Reddit and Quora, like you were talking about, but any type of online research, social media, do people a favor and be like, this is the experience I had. Don't go here. Any other questions?
all right, I will say I was talking to a faculty member in computer science who unfortunately had a grad student who were taken in by a Deceptive conference that had a really similar name to the real one, and they traveled to Paris and then, found it was one of those situations where it was like, a dozen different conferences in the same building. And that's really unfortunate. At least they hopefully enjoyed their time in Paris, but that's, an expensive mistake. So we don't mean to scare you. We just want you to be skeptical, especially when you're looking at conferences and journals like outside of publishers or organizations you're really familiar with or your mentors are familiar with. So just a few tips for identifying reputable publication venues. So talking to your mentors, your PIs, your peers as well about their experiences is always a good strategy. When you're, reviewing the literature, doing your research, and you come across good papers, take note of what journal or conference proceeding it's in and stash that away. So when it comes time that you have research you want to share, there may be some names that this is the kind of research I'm doing has been published here or was presented here. You can also more systematically investigate where your peers are publishing, and I'll show you that in a moment. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's a directory of open access journals that if you're specifically wanting to find an open access venue, that can be a good resource. So it's just this pretty simple website where open access journals can apply to be listed. So if it's on this site, that's like a measure of of quality and legitimacy. Not to say that if a journal isn't on this site, it's bad, but it's a good place to start if you're looking to publish open access. And I also want to point out that if you're specifically trying to find open access journal without an article processing charge, there's a filter where you can filter out those, so you're just seeing journals without fees. That will really limit the number down, but it's a good tool nonetheless. And you can search by keyword, like I have on the slide for circuits. You can also search more broadly by discipline to see what's there. But going back to how to investigate where your peers are publishing. So this is something that you can do with Web of Science, which is kind of a generalist science database that indexes a lot of journals across scientific disciplines. But what they all have in common is they have to be legit in order to be included in this database. So I'll just show you how you can do that. So I'm going to the library's website, and I'm going to just search Web of Science. Let's see. Surprise, this is asking me for a login. Is it okay? Let's see. I guess I'll do my own. Oh, this was a surprising barrier. Let's see. Oh. The cap lock's on. Jenny, do you want to try logging in? Thanks. Normally, this would not require login when you're on campus. I'm not sure what's up with that, but thank you for your patience.
Sorry, I don't have mine memorized.
But to give you a preview of what I'm going to show you, basically, you can do a normal article search for the topic that you are doing your research in. And then you can say, I only want to see the articles that are published on this topic by my peers at NC State, for example, or by my peers at another institution, like if you wanted to say MIT or something like that. And then you can, there's a button that says Analyze Results, and you can see like these are the top journals where these articles are coming from. It looks like Jenny's making progress. Okay. All right. So here on this, made it to the Web of Science homepage. So you could do something more specific, like I know, bioelectronics. I'm just going to go with circuits again. And then I'm going to add a row, and I'm going to select affiliation, and then start typing in North Carolina State University. So there's a bunch of articles. I'm not actually going to look at them. Instead, this Analyze Results button at the top. And it defaults to showing you how these articles break down by category. But what I'm actually interested in is publication titles. So what this is showing is like, here are, within Web of Science, the main journals where articles on circuits by NC State authors are being published. If that is useful information to you. And again, you could open it up and have no affiliation, just look everybody, where's everybody who is publishing on circuits publishing? So this chart will show you some of the top ones, and then you can also go all the way down the list by number of papers. So this is just one way to get a sense of the field and where the big publishing is happening related to, you know, whatever keyword is associated with your research. So at this point, we're pretty much done. What questions do you all have? I know you've asked some already. I guess we did a good job. I hope we did not scare you into thinking there's a deceptive publisher around every corner waiting to get you. But if you would like individual help, you're welcome to email either or both of us. And we're never going to say, you shouldn't publish in this journal, you shouldn't take this conference opportunity. We'll just give you like our 2 cents on what we think of it. And you should take that as like one piece of information along with your own assessment and that of your mentor. All right. Jenny, you want to say anything else? Okay. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank our speakers for their informative and fun session. Right? Thank you.